No role plays, just real. Chris and Lorenzo share 4 decades of combined experience to help you become a more effective leader.
We've never really, as a workforce, spent a lot of time on making sure we're developing good leaders.
We'll be able to share stories, experience, mistakes, failures, successes.
This is Hacking Your Leadership.
Welcome to Hacking Your Leadership. I'm Chris.
And I'm Lorenzo.
And Lorenzo, on this episode, I want to go back to one of our listener questions that I received a few days ago, now that we have finished our 5 Ps of effective leadership. And this question came in through LinkedIn from a person, and I just want to read it to our audience so that they know what we're going to be talking about. And then I want to get your opinion on this, because I think this is really important. And we touched on it once before, but it's been about 1.5 years since we discussed it. And I think it's really important to address again.
Cool.
So the question says, I lead a team of about 20 people in an industry where knowledge and expertise is vital. However, technological advancements are starting to replace some manual processes, and these processes are being moved or centralized, and this means my team needs about 25% less people. On paper, this change is cost-effective, but it's causing a bit of upheaval on my team. The 5 people whose jobs are no longer needed have been offered retraining to fulfill other roles, but I believe most will end up quitting. How can I support the decision when I don't think it was right? And how should I support my staff through this change as they worry about job security? So when I got this question, the first thing I thought was the episode we did when Toys R Us announced that it was closing. And that was back in March of 2018. It's episode number 55, if any of you want to check it out. We did it around this concept of how do you lead a team of people when job security isn't high. And in Toys R Us's case, it was when they knew the company was going out of business, what to do. And I think that's a really good revisiting if you want to listen to that episode. But have you ever been involved in a reorganization process that impacted your role, where you went from feeling like you had great job security to all of a sudden not knowing whether your paycheck was going to be there in a month?
I personally have been involved in many reorgs. It's one of the things that I think over time in any industry, certain industries or organizations tend to do them more often. But at the end of the day, any for-profit, nonprofit organization, you should be constantly looking for efficiencies or, adjustments in strategy if you're looking for long-term, growth and sustainability. So I've been a part of a lot of them. I think personally, there's never been a time where my actual job was one that was eliminated per se, or where I had to make a choice of either taking a job or losing a job type of deal. I've had the titles change of certain jobs, and I've had maybe the core responsibilities of the job somewhat adjust, but it was the same job and I was never necessarily at risk. But I have definitely been through it with peers that have been impacted. I've also, as a leader of people and leader of leaders, had to work through those types of reorganizations where jobs were eliminated or positions were eliminated, or there was evolution or changes in the expectations of jobs, similar to this one where maybe there's an opportunity where you've got people that work on one team, that team, it gets downsized, and a different team has now been created or grown, and the job is completely different. So yeah, I've definitely been in similar situations like this before.
Yeah, I think there's always going to be this kind of give and take when it comes to what's good for a person and what's good for an organization. And they are rarely the same thing. Sometimes they are. Sometimes what's good for the individual employees is good for the organization as a whole. But when an organization is talking about long-term sustainability, oftentimes decisions are made with the group in mind as opposed to a single person in mind. And so just looking at what little we know of this person's situation, it seems like 25% of their team is, from what it appears, isn't losing their job, but they're losing their positions. So their positions are going away, and they were offered retraining. Now, whether or not they get joy and fulfillment out of whatever roles they are offered, that's between each one of them in that organization. And no one should come to work every day doing a job they can't stand. So if they were doing a job they loved and that job is going away and now they're being asked to do something they don't love, then maybe it is time for them to leave their organization and go elsewhere. But I will tell you, I was a little bit taken aback in a positive way when I saw that that was what was being offered to them. Because in the reorgs that I have been through and that I've seen happen to peers and coworkers and friends, most of them don't involve the company saying, we're eliminating your position, but we still want you to stay on, and here's a role for you, jump right in and start doing it. Most of it has been, on the best case scenario, we have less roles and you all have to interview for it, and we're going to pick the best person for the job, and then all the rest of you are losing your job. And that tends to be the norm. So, part of me is wanting to say, wow, this is pretty incredible if they work for an organization that even offers this.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I think that it's something that doesn't necessarily happen that often. And I think, like, look, as a leader, the reality is this: like, change can be really difficult for everybody. No matter how long you've been doing it, no matter how much composure you have, no matter how many times you think like, oh, like change is the only constant, and we're always going through change, yada yada yada.
It's easy to say when you're not the one going through the change.
Of course it is, right? 100%, right?
Yeah.
Yes, and more importantly, I think as a leader, especially as the listener had mentioned, like as a new leader with a team, like you have this loyalty, you have this feeling, you have this situation where it's not just a change that's happening to the organization, like it's a change that's happening to my people. It's a change that's impacting the lives of people that look to me for guidance and support. And so when I see that I either don't have answers for them or I don't know how to handle this type of dialogue, then yeah, I don't agree with it, right? I would rather agree with us doing nothing and keeping everything the same.
Sure.
And then I don't have to maybe work through those emotions, both for myself as a leader and for the individuals that are being impacted. I can remember specifically a situation with an organization many, many, many years ago where I had a couple of employees that I was off for the day and they were goofing off, messing around. And, my boss, or like the boss's boss was there, and, they got caught the kind of horse playing, and they got in trouble, and they got sat down, and they both got written up, and, and like that was what was being discussed on my day off. And I got back in, and the boss pulled me in and said, hey, here's what's going on. This is what I saw. And I immediately got defensive. Like, what do you mean? Like we work really hard. They work really hard. I'm sure they were just messing around. Like let them be. And it was like I was so defensive about my people.
Right.
And to the point where he had to say, like, look, like they were doing something they shouldn't be doing. They got caught, and they can't do that again. So, like, I need you to be a leader and go have that conversation with them and hold them accountable. Right? Like we're not discussing whether or not they're good people or they're good at their job or like all these other things that we could talk about. We're talking about the fact that they didn't do something they were supposed to do, and they knew better, and they need to be reprimanded for it, right? I share that story because I can feel like in the question this empathy and feeling of like, oh, like, yes, even though they may get retraining, even though there may be a job for them with the organization still, it is still change to my people. And if it's impacting them, it can impact me as a newer leader. I can completely empathize with that.
Well, so first of all, that's a great point, because I think what it means is this listener clearly cares about the people reporting to them. And that's a great place to start from. So even if it means that you carry the burden of these problems for your employees with them, it means that you at least want them to succeed and you want them to be happy. We talk about parenting tie-ins all the time. I think when your story, when it comes to your people, there's some of the defensiveness comes from the fact that your people are a reflection of you. And so I think about if I'm sitting at a restaurant with my family and one of my kids starts goofing off, I learned long ago how to eat my meal with my kids goofing off. That's not what I'm worried about. I'm worried about the other parents in the restaurant judging me as a bad parent because my kids are goofing off.
Right.
And so that's a different motivation. But that's where if I chastise one of my kids for goofing off in a restaurant, that's what it's stemming from. It's not from that I can't eat my dinner while they're goofing off. Believe me, I learned to ignore them years ago. but the idea that other people are going to be judging me, or they're going to be looking to me as the person to have to solve this problem, is stressful. And so it's the same thing with you and your employees goofing off. It's like you're not there, and you now have to defend them because the only other option is to say they can't handle their job duties in the absence of you, and that doesn't make you look like a proactive and a good leader. So the knee jerk is to come to their defense. And then same thing with this listener that wrote in, the idea that this listener has to be the spokesperson for the organization. It can be daunting. It can be something that a lot of leaders don't necessarily want to take on. But I'll be honest, that's the job of the leader sometimes, is to be the spokesperson for the organization to the people who report to you directly. Because, I heard a long time ago that you are 10% what happens to you and 90% how you react to those things. This is exactly one of those things. How these people come out the other side is less about what is happening to them and more about how they perceive that thing happening, and the leader's summary of the situation and how the support is there from the leader to these people who are going through retraining. And honestly, the other 15 people on the team whose roles aren't changing, but now they kind of see what's happening to their coworkers and thinking, wait a minute, maybe my role's on the chopping block next. How this is handled will greatly impact how those other people perceive their own job security and their support in the organization going forward.
Right. And I think too, it's like if these types of changes are happening and you don't agree with it or you feel that it's wrong, like really going deep into why that is. Is it wrong because it's being presented as a cost savings and you have access to a P&L and you're like, there's no problem with cost. Like we make plenty of money, right? Is the piece that you don't agree with just simply feeling like it's not necessary, or that these people, that maybe the team, these individuals add more value than the organization believes they add? Like there's a lot of dynamics in understanding why as a leader you don't agree with the thing. And sometimes, I'll admit, sometimes my own projections of how I feel about certain things get in that way. I get the organization wants to change or do something. They want to invest in something. They want to take away an investment in something. Maybe I really care about that thing. Maybe I don't like that thing. And now I have to do it more often, or I'm not allowed to do the thing I like to do anymore at all. Right? Like all of a sudden now I can say, I don't agree with that. And it actually has nothing to do with business and nothing to do with what's right for the company or the employees or anything. I just don't like it, right? And so that would definitely be something that I would say would have to be thought about and reflected on, is what exactly is it that you don't agree with? And is it emotional? Is it your own projections? Is there underlying things that would be important for the organization to know or to understand? Is there somebody that you can talk to about this if in fact you feel that this change will actually have a negative impact? Possibly. Like those are things that you should think about and discover. But as you were saying, we can't avoid these things. Like all businesses do this, and I think as we continue to go forward into the future of automation, we should absolutely expect some of these tasks to be given to technology to handle. But then that will sometimes, and a lot of times, allow people to do the things that people do best, which many times is, the creative elements and thinking and brainstorming and strategizing how to have a more effective business.
Right. So, just quoting directly from the listener question, on paper, this change is cost effective. So that means they can admit from a money standpoint, it is the right decision, just from a money standpoint. And how can I support this decision when I don't think it was right? Okay, well, you asked, why don't you think it's right? If you don't think it's right because it's causing stress amongst people on your team who you care about, then that doesn't necessarily mean it's the wrong decision for the organization. It means it's a difficult decision that the organization had to make. But there's a third question in there that is it the right decision? Not is it the cost-effective decision, and not is it the right decision for the employees, but is it the right decision for the organization? And cost-effective and right are not synonymous. That's not what I'm saying here. Is it the right decision? Meaning the brand of the organization, the long-term sustainability of the organization. Are they meeting their clients or customers, whoever they are, where they need to be meeting them in order to be competitive in that space? If this decision supports those things, then it is the right decision. Even if it costs more money. If it costs more money, it's the right decision to do that. And if it costs less money, it's the right decision if it answers those boxes yes. And so that's the more important part here. But I will say, let's go from a standpoint of, let's assume that this listener is right. It's the wrong decision. Okay, well, it's still happening. So what do you do going forward? What do we do if we assume that all the things of, can you influence it? Well, yeah, but the time to influence it was probably 6 months ago. If you had any influence over it. We're at the point now where these people have already been told that their job is going away and they're going to be retrained. So it seems like the implementation is already full speed ahead. So the time to kind of put the brakes on might not be now. And so if we can assume that what do you do knowing that it's an inevitability at this point, this is where the rubber meets the road as far as leadership goes, because how you frame it for your employees to be able to accept makes the difference. So you shouldn't be telling your employees, how can I support the decision when I don't think it was right? You shouldn't be telling them you don't think it was right. You should be making sure to, and I'm not saying you need to lie and say you agree with it when you don't. I'm saying you need to find out why you don't think it is right and seek to understand what was behind it so that you can articulate the why behind it. If you don't agree with it, it's not your responsibility to tell them you disagree, but you can share with them the why behind it. This is why it was done. This is why the organization chose to go this route. And if you find out what those answers are from your boss or your boss's boss, really seek hard to understand those answers, because they could have been done for a lot of different things. And a lot of organizations don't really do a great job of articulating the why behind a lot of these high-level decisions in how they impact the people that they actually impact. So once you've really made steps to understand why that was done, sharing the why behind it, it's not going to necessarily convince them that it was now the right decision, but just knowing the why behind it really helps people understand why this is happening. They could disagree with it, but at least they know why it's happening, as opposed to being in the situation where their job is eliminated and they don't even know why yet.
I completely agree. And with that, it brings us to this episode's 1 Minute Hack.
The 1 Minute Hack.
Okay, for this episode's 1 Minute Hack, here's what I want you to do. I want you to get out your pen and paper, and I want you to write down 3 questions. These are going to be 3 check boxes that you need to make sure you keep in your mind as you're going through a process of a reorg where team members are impacted by it. The first question is, do I have all the answers here? Not do I agree with them, not do I support them or do I not support them, but do I have the answers? What's happening and why? If you don't have those answers, the first thing you need to do is make sure you have those answers, whoever it takes to ask to find out. Just because organizations aren't great about articulating them and being forthcoming with them doesn't mean they're playing them close to the vest. You'll find the answers if you look for them, if you ask the right people. So get those answers so that you have that knowledge with you. The second question is, do my people know the answers? So if they don't ask, it doesn't mean they know already. It means they're stewing on it and they're assuming the worst. So you as the leader need to be proactive to sit down with each of them, either as a group or individually, anybody who you know is going to be impacted or you think might be worried that they might be impacted, and make sure they know the answers that you have found out about why the organization is doing what they're doing. And then lastly, assuming there's nothing you can do about it and the organization is moving forward with those decisions, you need to frame it in such a way that lets your people know that whatever you can do, you will do to support them in this change. Not you're going to make this change, not you're going to stop the organization from doing this, but here are the tools I have in my bag in order to help you get through this. Whatever I can do, I will do. If they feel like they have your support through this process, even if they end up leaving the organization, they'll look back on you as a positive influence in their leadership life, even if they don't like the way the organization dealt with the reorganization.
Yeah, it's a great 1 minute hack. And I think that, from the perspective of being the leader, that really is the responsibilities, is to understand exactly as much as you possibly can what's going on, making sure that your team and your people also have as much information as possible to make the best decision for themselves, and then showing up, as a support to whatever it is they need. Sometimes in this example, it is retraining for another part of the organization. In other examples, it's that they don't have a job anymore. And that could require you to be able to provide them references or help them with resumes or help build interview skills, whatever that may be. But I think it's important as a leader that you really have to make sure that you continue to own their experience regardless of outcome.
Right. Don't shoulder the burden of their entire future and everything, because that's not on you. At the end of the day, we're all adults here, and we are responsible for our own futures and making our own decisions. But focus on the problems, and focus on the things that you can do to support somebody, and then understand that you can put your head on the pillow and you did everything you can, and then don't stress about it. Because at the end of the day, some problems are ones that are outside your purview as the leader of this team. Some decisions are made without you in the room, and that's just the way it works.
Yep. And with that, it brings us to the end of this episode. This is Hacking Your Leadership. I'm Lorenzo.
And I'm Chris.
And we'll talk to you all next time.